To Yerushalmi Pesachim. Now, we are up to Ches Amud Beis. Now, we brought, until now, the evidence of Rav Chanina Sakana Kohenim and Rabbi Akiva. And we were talking about burning kodshim on truma, which is tameh, where you're increasing the tumah on something which is already tameh. Remember, there were different opinions as to was it a tameh min haTorah with something else, which was tameh min haTorah, but not to such a degree, or there was bar kapara, where there was a tameh min haTorah with something which was rabbinically tameh. There were various opinions on that. So now we're discussing, we're in halacha ches. Are you allowed to defile trumas chometz? So it's chometz truma, which is tahor, and it's on Erev Pesach.
So you're going to burn it anyway.
Now, we know eventually it will come a time when it's osur. The question is, have we reached that time yet? So first of all, Rav Meir. So Rav Meir comes along, and he says, midivrein, from the earlier Tanoim. Now, again, the one I was going to discuss, who is he referring to? Who are the earlier Tanoim? Is it the two Mishnayos we've just had, Rav Chanina Sakana Kohenim and Rabbi Akiva, or maybe it's somewhere completely different elsewhere in Shas? As we shall see in due course. So Rav Meir says, midivrein, from the earlier authorities, the earlier Tanaim, lamadnu, we have learnt, shesofin truma tahira im hatmea b'Pesach. So you have chometz, which is truma, and it's tahir. It's not tamei at all, but it's chometz with tamei chometz b'Pesach. Now Pesach here means at the time when you're burning the chometz. It means erev Pesach. Amalai Rabbi Yossi said, who's like the Tama Rabbi Yossi, Eina hi amida. No, it's not comparable. You cannot learn this din from those words of those earlier Tanaim. That's what we've got so far. So you can burn truma, which is tahar, with tameh, and Rabbi Yossi said, no, it's not right. That's what we've got so far. Now, the Gemara will explain why we can't compare the cases. The Mishnah carries on. Moedim Rabbi Lezer Rabbi Yeshua. Now, although they argue about burning trumas chametz on Erev Pesach, as Rabbi Yossi is going to explain, but if you've got trumas chametz, which is tahar and tameh, they agree. So you've got chametz, which is tahar, chametz, which is tameh. Shesafin zu le'atzma v'zu le'atzma. You should burn them separately. We don't want to defile the truma, which is tahar. We don't need to yet. We don't need to defile it, so burn it separately. So where do they argue? Ala teluya, so something which is safek tameh, ala tameh, and something which is definitely tameh. So you've got something safek tameh, it might be tameh, and something is definitely tameh. Can you burn them together or not? Rabbi Lezer says you should burn them separately. Rabbi Yeshua says shtein ka'achas. You should burn the two together as one in one flame, one bonfire. Now, although the truma, which is tola, which is safek tuma, is going to touch the definitely tameh one, and now the safek one will become definitely tameh. But in this situation, they're arguing. So Rabbi Lezer said you can burn them separately. Rabbi Yeshua says burn them together. Now, if it's definitely tahar, then there's no argument. Even Rabbi Yeshua, who's lenient where it's a safek tuma to burn it together, but that's where there's a safek tuma. But if it's definitely tahar, then he says you definitely cannot burn it with the tameh one. Right? We're talking Erev Pesach. We haven't yet reached a time where you have to burn it, right? So where it's safek tameh, so then Rabbi Yeshua says you can burn it together. Where it's definitely tahar, then definitely you have to burn them separately. Now, Rav Meir said in the Mishnah, you can burn trumas chametz tahar with the tmeah on Pesach. But it doesn't mean on Pesach. Ma b'Pesach, ba ba'asa. It means the 14th of Nisan, which is Erev Pesach. Now, Rav Meir learned the din from the words of the previous Tanaim. Now, what does it mean, the words of the previous Tanaim? Who are the previous Tanaim? Rav Yochanan said, when Rav Meir said from their previous words, it means Medivir Rabbi Akiva and Medivir Rabbi Chanina Sakana Kohenim. It's the opinions we've already had quoted in the previous two Mishnayos. Whereas Rav Shimon ben Lakish Amar, he said no. From their words, it means someone completely different, a totally completely different argument. Medivir Rabbi Lezer and Medivir Rabbi Yeshua. Now the words of Rabbi Lezer and Rabbi Yeshua is a Mishnah in Trumas. Okay? So according to him, according to Rish Lakish, this is not a continuation at all of the previous Mishnahs. The words of Rabbi Lezer and Rabbi Yeshua. So let's explain. So Rabbi Lezer and Rabbi Yeshua, they argue, imagine you have a barrel of wine of truma, which is broken in an upper vat. There's an upper container, and where the grapes are pressed. And then you have, beneath it, you have a vat of chulin, which is tameh. Wine, which is chulin, which is tameh. Now, if this truma now, there's like a leak that's spread out, that's come through the upper vat. So all this truma is now gushing down into the chulin, which is tameh below, and it will forbid it all. However, and we don't have 100 against it, so if this wine all comes down, it's going to just going to defile the chulin, ruin everything. Now, there is a solution, and that is you try and catch the wine, the truma wine, as it comes down, before it comes down. Yeah. The problem is, the only kalim that we have are tameh kalim. Can we use tameh kalim to catch this truma wine? If we don't do anything anyway, we'll get ruined. Yeah. Can we catch it on its way down to stop it defiling? Can we catch it on its way down to stop it defiling the chulin below? That's the discussion over there. You don't have any tahor kalim, you have tameh kalim. Rabbi Lezer said there, you can't receive the wine in tameh kalim before it reaches the vat to save the chulin, because you cannot defile truma with your own hands, even in this situation where whatever happens, the truma will get lost. You're not allowed to save it from being tameh, you'll forbid it. Rabbi Yeshua allows you to do it to prevent the financial loss of chulin, because anyway it's going to get ruined, therefore there's no guarding required for it anymore, and you can defile it with your own hands. So that's the argument over there. So Rish Lakish comes along and tells us, Rameir learns from Rabbi Yeshua, just like he allows you to defile the wine, the tahor wine of truma, which is going to get ruined, to save the chulin, so also, if you have tahor truma on Erev Pesach, you can burn it with a tameh one, because anyway it's going to be needed to be burnt. It's Erev Pesach, right? This chametz here is going to be needed to be burnt. So just like you can use a tameh keli to receive the wine, so that's where comes along our Mishnah, that you're allowed to burn the tahor chametz with the tameh one, because anyway you'll come to a stage where you have to burn it. And he allows it not just in the 6th hour, where it's already rabbinically forbidden, but even other hours on Erev Pesach, like the 5th hour or the 4th hour, because we know this is going to be lost. No one's going to eat this stuff. We know no one's going to eat it. It's going to be forbidden. It's going to need burning. And that's what he means. From their words means from this Rabbi Yeshua, who allows you to use a tameh vessel to receive the wine. Therefore, they learned you're allowed to burn the tahor truma with the tameh truma. Okay. So, Rav Yechon divrei Rabbi Akiva divrei Rabbi Chanina Sgan HaKohanim, Moshe ben Lakish divrei Rabbi Meir, Elazar divrei Rabbi Yeshua. Right, let's move on. Rav Zira, Kumi Rabbi Yassi. Rav Zira. Now we're going to ask on Rish Lakish's view. So he said they learnt everything from the case of receiving the wine, stopping the wine, receiving the wine in the tameh vessels. According to the view of Rav Yochanan, now he said, Rav Yochanan said, this Mishnah is a continuation of the previous Mishnahs. Rabbi Akiva, burning tameh with truma, burning something tameh with something tameh with something tameh with rabbanan. So that's how he learns, continuation of the previous Mishnahs. So Adate Rav Yochanan, according to Rav Yochanan, I understand Midivrayan is going on the Tanaim in the Mishnahs we've had until now. Adate Rish Lakish, according to Rish Lakish, is going on another Mishnah in Trumas. Suddenly we're referring to something completely out of the blue. Ma ba Rabbi Lezer Rabbi Yeshua lekan. How's the continuation here? You're learning from Tanaim, but we're not mentioning our Mishnah at all. No one's talking about truma and catching truma and tameh kalim. So how suddenly he says from their words, suddenly he's referring to people we've not referred to. So Rabbi Yassi answers, Amalei. He says Tanaim inon. Rabbi Lezer and Yeshua, they were Tanaim before the generation of Rameir. Rameir says, from these Tanaim in front who lived before us, we learnt this din that I say. So we learned from them. You're right, we're not quoting them here, but this is who we've learnt it from. We've learnt it from them. Now, Rabbi Yosef argued in the Mishnah Let's just see Rabbi Yosef the Tana. So Rameir was the one who said you can burn Truma Tahira with Tamea. And Rabbi Yosef said, no, it's not the same. You can't learn it from there. So let's see now. Rabbi Yasa b'shem Rabbi Yochanan. So Rabbi Yasa argued on Rameir, who allowed you to burn the Truma of Chometz, which is Tahor, with the Tameh one on Erev Pesach. So now the Gemara discusses how far does he go with his argument. Rabbi Yassi, b'shem Rabbi Yochanan, this is an Amoira, Rabbi Yassi, not the Tana Rabbi Yosa, right? Rabbi Yassi b'shem Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yossi also agrees, the Tana in that Mishnah, he says, look, you can't burn it together on Erev Pesach, but B'Shisha Asa, on the 16th, on Pesach itself, when it's Asim in Torah, he agrees, Shesafin Truma Tahira Utmea. You can burn the Tahir one and the Tameh one together. There's no argument only if you can burn it on Erev Pesach, when it's only rabbinically forbidden. But once Pesach has come in and it's forbidden min Torah,
there's no possibility.
then there's Chametz now. It's Chametz min Torah. Then you can definitely burn the Truma, which is Tahar, with the Truma, which is Tameh. Okay. Rabbi Yassi Maksha. So the Arameira Rabbi Yassi now asks, Lama Rabbi Yossi. Now, why did the Tana Rabbi Yossi Omer? He said, no, Eina Hamida, that's not right. You can't learn. Eina Hamida sounds like you can't learn it. Wherever you want to learn it from, you can't learn it from there. You can't learn the din of Trumas Chametz Tahor from the words of Hanania Rabbi Kiva. According to Rabbi Yochanan. So Rabbi Yochanan's version is that this Mishnah is going on the previous Mishnahs. And Rabbi Yasa says, Eina Hamida, you can't learn it from there. So why is that? Why did the Tana feel you can't learn it from the previous Mishnahs? Okay, where Rameir wanted to learn his din that you can burn the two together, and Rabbi Yassi said, no, it's not right. But why not? Now, really, Rabbi Yosef's svara makes more sense. Don't burn them together. He argues in Rameir, let's say Trumas Chometz, which is rabbinically forbidden. Now, remember, there were two ways of understanding the previous Mishnahs. Was it talking about things forbidden from the Torah with things forbidden from the Torah, or was it Torah with rabbinical things? That was one point, Bar Kapara and Rabbi Yochanan we had. And also we had, so that was one of the dinim we had. So he says here, Rabbi Yosef argues on Rameir with Trumas Chametz, which is Asim Rabbanon, and we can't learn the din from Kodshim and Truma, which is Tavim and Torah, because that's what Rav Hanania and Rabbi Kiva were talking about. But Rabbi Yasser still comes along and asks his question on Rabbi Yochanan. So Rabbi Yochanan was the one who said we're talking about Torah things. So Rabbi Yassi, the Amoira Rabbi Yassi. Now remember, there were two interpretations to understand the previous Mishnahs. Was it Torah things, Tameh and more Tameh, or was it Torah and rabbinical things? So Rabbi Yassi, and then Rabbi Kiva came along with things which are forbidden from the Torah but not Tameh. So Rabbi Yassi, Du Shama, when he heard the Amr of Yochanan, he heard Rabbi Yochanan say that Rameir learnt his din from those previous Mishnahs, Medivrei Rabbi Kiva and Medivrei Rabbi Chanina Cohen. Now, there were two interpretations of it, but the interpretation that he heard was Bar Kapara's interpretation, who said we're talking about a rabbinical with a biblical. Remember, rabbinical tumah with biblical tumah. Uhu Shama, the Bar Kapara Amar, he heard that the Bar Kapara interpretation, that the Ava Tumah mentioned in Rav Hanania Sagana Kohen was Ava Tumah Dvar Torah. Something became Tameh through an Av Min Torah. And then something else became Tameh to a lesser degree, the Vlad Tumah Midivreyan. Two things were mixed up, right? The Torah one and the rabbinical one. You're allowed to burn them together. That was Bar Kapara's interpretation. One was biblical, one was rabbinical. And Rav Hanania Sagana Kohen gave evidence you could burn them together. Meat which is rabbinically tameh with meat which is biblically tameh, although you're going to defile it, which until now it was tahor ben Torah and tameh midrabanan only. It was, you are mixing tahor ben Torah and tameh ben Torah, and you're burning them together. And this was Bar Kapara's explanation. And this is what he'd heard. Rabbi Yassi had heard. V'lo Shama. Now, Rabbi Yassi, the Amora, had never heard the other interpretation. Rabbi Yochanan, who said, no, they're both biblical. One is more than the other, but they're both biblical. He never heard that. Bein Zeh, Devad Torah. That both, one was Avatuma from the Torah, one was Vladatuma from the Torah. He never heard that. So Rabbi Yossi only heard Bar Kapara's version. So he understood that when Rabbi Yochanan said Rav Meir learned his din from Rav Hanania, the previous Mishnahis, he meant that Rav Meir learned his din that just like Rav Hanania allowed Tamim and Torah and things which is rabbinical, which was Bar Kapara's explanation, so you can defile chametz at a time when it's rabbinically a problem. You understand? He learned the previous Mishnahs were Tamim and Torah and Midrabanan Tameh. So now when you apply it to here, he thinks you're burning the chametz at a time when it's rabbinically forbidden. And therefore, Rabbi Yossi argues, because he holds we cannot learn an Issa of Tumah, and you're allowed to, basically he holds, you can't apply the two. You can't learn Issa from Tumah. Although you're allowed to defile Truma, which might be rabbinically forbidden, but it doesn't mean you can defile Truma, which is Asur Midrabanan. Therefore, Hu Makshi, and therefore he asked, Kishem Shemuta Lisraif, if you can burn Isur Torah, Truma, which is Asur Min Torah, for some other reason, right? In Tumas Torah, with Truma, which has an impurity Min Torah, even according to Rabbi Yossi, the way Rabbi Yochanan explained it, and the reason Rabbi Yochanan is that Torah things you can definitely burn together. You're saying this is a problematic Torah thing for some other reason. This is Tamim and Torah. Those you can burn together. Shekain, Sarfin, because you're allowed to burn Tumas Torah, something which is Tamim and Torah, together with a higher degree of Tumas Torah. Two things which are Tamim and Torah, one more than the other, you can burn them together. And Rabbi Yochanan holds we can learn Isur from Tumah, something which also has a psul, because of something similar to Tumah, so like Noisa, for example, right, is equal to Tumah, and therefore, if you can increase Tumah Min Torah, so something which is already Tameh Min Torah, you're increasing its level, so I understand you can be Metameh Min Torah as something which is forbidden Min Torah. So he understands we can compare, just like different things from the Torah, one is more than the other, you can burn them, so if something is also Min Torah, you can also burn that as well. That he gets. And kachye mutar lisraif. So also, he'll say, I'll go further. You can burn truma, which is issa midivrein, which is like truma, which is tahor on Erev Pesach in Tumas Torah. Kachye mutar. Actually, this is the question. Actually, kachye mutar lisraif. 1 second. If you can do 1 second. Yeah. 1 second. You should be allowed to burn truma, which is rabbinically forbidden. That's Erev Pesach, together with truma, which is biblically tamei, even to Yossi. So he says, you should be allowed to learn even Issa Devrein, even rabbinical problems, truma tahor and Erev Pesach in Tumas Torah, even according to Yossi, sheken sarf in Tumas Devrein in Tumas Torah, because we can burn. Where it's rabbinical tumah, because he learned Bar Kapara's understanding with Tumas Torah. So he wants to extend it, just like you can burn rabbinical with biblical. So therefore, you can burn it Erev Pesach as well. So there's no difference between Kodshim and Truma, if they're not roy because of Tumah, or whether they're not roy for any other reason. And Rav Chanina learns, based on Bar Kapara's explanation, there's no difference if it's Tamid Rabbanan, you can burn them together, Tamid Rabbanan, Tamid Torah. Yeah, you can defile them both. So Rav Yossi should have agreed to Rav Meir. He really should have agreed to Rav Meir. That's the way he understood the case. He should have agreed to Meir that you can burn Trumas Chometz Torah with Tameh even on Erev Pesach, when the Chometz is only Asur Midrabanan. He basically should have agreed to Rav Meir. Yeah, you can burn it Erev Pesach. And yet he argues on Rav Meir. And he says, no, you can't burn this Trumas Chometz on Erev Pesach, right? On Yom Tov, he agrees you can burn it. But Erev Pesach, he doesn't allow you. Why does he not allow you? If he understood the whole thing based on Bar Kapara, he should have allowed you to burn Chometz or Tahor in Tameh on Erev Pesach. Ella, you have to say, the fact that he argues and says, no, you can't burn Chometz, which is Tahor, with Tameh, at a rabbinically forbidden time. This is the key here. At a rabbinically forbidden time. Right? Maybe the 6th hour of the day, right? You can't burn them then. You have to say that according to Rabbi Yossi, Shanya hi isur, shanya hi tuma. There's obviously a difference between isur things and tuma things, right? Although you can defile minat Torah, something which is rabbinically tamei anyway. If it's rabbinically tamei, you can burn it with tamei things minat Torah. That does not mean that you've got kodesh and truma, which is rabbinically forbidden. You're not allowed to be metame something which is. You're only allowed to be metame something which already has a degree of tuma on it, even if it's only a rabbinical tuma. However, you're not allowed to be metame something which is not fitting, which hasn't got a shem tuma at all, right? It doesn't. You can't defile something which is not tame, even though it's a rabbinical time, this, that, the other. No, you can defile something which is already tame, but you can't defile something which is not tame. Now, if that's the case, okay. So Amar Rav Yassi. So how, if that's the case, can Rav Yassi say b'shem Rabbi Yochanan hakol moedim? Everyone agrees, but Shisha on the 16th, when the Isur Chametz is Minat Torah, Shesaf in Truma Tahira or Tamei. You can burn the Truma which is Tahar and the Truma which is Tamei together. So you see, Rav Yochanan holds is Asim Minat Torah is the same as something Tamei Minat Torah. You can defile it, but Kashem, just as Shaloi Chalakta Lanu. Look, Rav Yochanan, you made no distinction between Isur Torah and Tumas Torah. You're allowed to defile Trumas Chametz Tahar, which is Asim Minat Torah, Sheken Sofin, because we can burn Tumas Torah in Tumas Torah. We can burn different degrees of Tumah Minat Torah. There's no difference between Tameh and Asur. Kach lo tachlok lanu. There should be no difference between Issa Midivrein, which is Trumas Chametz, which is Tahar on Erev Pesach, at a time which is rabbinically forbidden. There should be no difference. Lo Tumas Torah, to something which is Tameh Minat Torah, Sheken Sofin, Tumas Divrein, in Tumas Torah, because we are allowed to burn something which is Tameh Midrabanan with something which is Tameh Minat Torah. So basically, according to you, Rabbi Yossi, you should have agreed to Reb Meir that you're allowed to burn Trumas Chametz, which is Tahar, with Tameh on Erev Pesach. Based on your understanding of the situation and what the Mishnah is going on in Bar Kappar's explanation, you should have allowed, you shouldn't be arguing with Reb Meir about burning Chametz, Trumas Chametz, which is Tahar, with Tameh on Erev Pesach. So obviously, one of the assumptions that we've taken until now, because this question is not correct. Ella, so now, because of this question, we have to change things. Ella, we have to say, according to Rav Yochanan, Bein zeh dvar Torah. Now, so the previous Mishnayos, we're not going to follow Bar Kappar's explanation, that one was biblical and one was rabbinical. We're going to say no, Rabbi Yochanan Sham. Bein zeh dvar Torah. The Ava Tumah, Vlada Tumah, they're all from the Torah. You were burning things which are Tamim Minat Torah with things which are Tamim Minat Torah. One a higher degree, one a lesser degree. And Rechananya allowed it to increase Tumah to something which is already Tameh, right? That's what he allowed. But not to defile something which was only Tameh rabbinically. With this we understand why Rabbi Yosef said you can't apply that din to chametz on Erev Pesach when it's only rabbinically forbidden. Because he only learned you can burn biblical things together, one more than the other, one tameh more than the other. He never said rabbinical things, and that's why he's not happy of burning chametz on Erev Pesach in a rabbinical time. You can't learn Issa Drabanan from Tumah Minat Torah. Nevertheless, he agrees, you're allowed to burn Trumas Chametz, which is Tahar, with Tameh when it's on Pesach, on the 16th. When chametz is anyway also Minat Torah, just like you can increase tumah from something which is tamei Minat Torah, because there's no difference between something which is also Minat Torah to something which is tamei Minat Torah. You follow that? So he's saying because your biblical things you can burn together, so then on Pesach you can burn the chametz, which is now proper chametz now with things. After Rechir Baba Mitzur, Va'ama Min Shmei Rav Yochanan, he said, Bein zeh or Bein zeh Dvar Torah. Yes, this is support to what we just said, whether it's the Ava Tumah we had before in the previous Mishnah, the Vlad Tumah, the two things being burnt together, they were both biblically forbidden. They were both Tamei Minat Torah. Va'amaris, and I said to Rechib, Ba Ya'us, that is right. With this you understand the question we asked from Rav Yochanan. Although Rabbi Yosef agrees to Rav Meir, we can learn Issa from Tumah, and he agrees you can be Metamei Trumas Chametz on the 16th, which is on Pesach, when it's Asim Minat Torah, but he argues on Rav Meir, who learned from the Eidos Rav Chananya on Erev Pesach. He didn't allow Erev Pesach because where are we learning it from? We're learning it from the previous Mishnayos. And there it was Torah meat, Torah forbidden with Torah forbidden. Taman, in the Eidos Rav Hanania, they burned the Kodshim, which was Tumas Torah. They were both forbidden from the Torah, one a more degree than the other. Im Tumas Torah. But here, Ramea is allowing you to burn Trumas Chametz, which is only Psul Drabanon, is only forbidden in the afternoon on Erev Pesach, it's only rabbinically forbidden, Im Tumas Torah. And that's where Rabbi Yosef said, I cannot accept that. Begin Kach, and because of that, Rabbi Yosef Amar, Rabbi Yosef said, Eina hi amida. He says, you can't learn an Issa Drabanon from Tumah Menat Torah. Okay? So to summarize, yeah, you with me? To summarize, he's saying, look, it's all very, the case, we thought that, with Bar Kapara's explanation, that previously was Drabanan and Torah, and therefore, what's the problem here then? There's also Drabanan. Here it's a Zman, a time of a rabbinical time. But then we're saying, no, really it's the other interpretation, Rabbi Yochanan's interpretation. There was Torah with Torah Tumah, and that's where you can burn them together. And therefore here, there's no reason why you should be allowed to burn the Chametz on Erev Pesach when it's only a rabbinical time. And that's why Rabbi Yosef said, I completely do not agree. Now, we move on. Okay, you got a few more minutes? Yeah? So now, if that's the case, we've explained why, according to Rabbi Yochanan's interpretation, the Eidos of Hanani Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Yosef said you cannot learn the din of Rameh from there. They were talking about Kodesh and Truma, which were possible from Tumah Menat Torah. You cannot apply that to Trumas Chametz in the 6th hour, which is only rabbinically forbidden. But the question is, why does Rameh hold that you can learn this din from there? How does Rameh say you can burn the Truma on Erev Pesach? And where does he get it from? Furthermore, according to Bar Kapara, who explained that Rav Hanani and Rabbi Akiva was speaking about Kodesh and Truma Psulim, there was like rabbinical Tumah, with Torah Tumah, with rabbinical Tumah, where did Rameh learn his din from them? And also, I understand where Rameh learned his din from them, according to Bar Kapara. There was rabbinical, here's rabbinical. That I get. But why does Rabbi Yossi argue and say you can't learn your din from them? So these are the two questions. So Vekasha Rav Yochanan, according to Rabbi Yochanan's explanation, so it's all Torah din we're talking about there. Al de Rameh. So then it's question against Rameh. V'hadar, and just like this, Rabbi Yossi Amar Enehi Amida. So 1 second. V'kasha, so we've got two questions. V'kasha Rav Yochanan, according to the explanation of Yochanan, Al Rameh, so we've got a question on Rameh, where he got his words from. V'hadar Rabbi Yossi Amar, and also we have a question what Rabbi Yossi said, Enehi Amida, I don't know how you can learn it from there. So Rabbi Yossi argued against Rameh. Rabbi Yossi seems to be right. Erev Pesach, 6th hour, is not the same as Rav Hanan and Rabbi Akiva. They were talking about biblical things. You can't apply that din to a din to rabbinical, which is the way here. They were talking about Kodesh and Truma, which are not roy for their mitzvah Menat Torah. We're talking about Trumas Chametz in the 6th hour, which is fitting Menat Torah. So obviously you can't learn this from there. So it's a question on Rameh. How did he learn it from there? So the Gemara answers, Rav Abin, Rameh Kedate, Rameh following his reasoning. To Rameh Machmeh B'divrei. You know something? He's so strict, even in rabbinical din, Kedivrei Torah, like biblical dinim. He's strict even in rabbinical, like he equates Trumas Chametz on Erev Pesach, which is Asur Midrabanan. He equates it to Kodshim and Truma, which is possible because of Tumah Menat Torah. And he learns, just like Hanan and Rabbi Akiva allowed you to increase Tumah and to Kodshim and Truma, which is already Tameh or Pasul Menat Torah, and to a bigger degree, he allows you to increase it. He also allows you to defile Trumas Chametz at a time when it's only rabbinically forbidden. Now, where do we find this in Rameh? That he is machmeh with Drabanans as well. Anash kacham, Rameh machmeh b'divrei and kedivrei Torah. Where do we see this? Amram chidna, k'adet tanina tama. We've learned in Nida. Haraya kesem, a woman who sees a stain of blood on her garment. She doesn't know when this blood left her. Right? She's tamei midrabanan usually with a stain. Now, Minat Torah, she's not tamei unless she has a hargasha, unless she feels this blood leaving her. So this is like a stain which is bigger than a bean, whatever it is. If she finds a small stain, she's tahar. Tumas Ksamim, the din of stains is only rabbinical, and they were lenient in certain cases. It may have come from a louse or whatever it is, if it's a small size, whatever it is. So now, Araya Kesem, she sees this stain on her garment. Arezim will call Kelef. So now, the question is, of course, there were always different cycles. There was Nida cycles and Ziva cycles. Yeah? Harezim will call Kelef. Now, we don't know. She has her 7 days of Nida, and you have your 11 days of the Ziva cycle. And the blood was in, not like today where things are all mixed up all over the place. We don't really have Ziva nowadays. With Machbir for Choshish, that every woman is Yeledes Bezov, whatever it is. So Harezim will call Kelef. So therefore, she has this sighting, and during the Nida cycle or the Ziva cycle, we don't know. If you find it in the Ziva cycle, Chasheshes Mishum Zoiv, Divra of Meir, we have to worry that maybe she's turning into a Zava, and that's why she has to keep the 7 clean days. Divra of Meir. The Chacham said, Ein B'Ksamim Mishum Zoiv. We don't have to worry that this stain is going to create her into being a Zava. You don't have to worry she's a Zava Gedola. They hold since she definitely didn't see down for 3 days, 3 separate days, and the stains are rabbinical, we can be lenient. We're not machmir to treat her as a possible zava. Reb Meir holds we're machmir with stains like tumah from the Torah, and we have to worry for all chashashas that any blood can cause, because he holds that dinim drabanan can be treated like the strict dinim of the Torah. So Reb Meir holds that even an issur drabanan of chametz on Erev Pesach is treated like issur min HaTorah, and based on this, he said that from the evidence of Hanani and Rabbi Akiva, you can defile kodshim and truma, which is possible, and it's not fitting for a mitzvah min HaTorah. We learn you can also be metame trumas chametz on Erev Pesach at a time when it's forbidden and it's only not fitting rabbinically. So just like Rameh is machmeh with rabbinical dinim with these stains to treat it as biblical, so also this chametz on Erev Pesach, he says you can burn it together even though it's only rabbinically problem. The kashya de bar kapara. So that was one question which we had, and we've given an answer to it. But there was a second question. The kashya de bar kapara. According to the explanation of bar kapara, al Rabbi Yossi, there was a question on the view of Rabbi Yossi, which was Rabbi Yossi, who said, Eina men amida. V'hadar, Rabbi Meir said, Midivrei lemadnu. He said, look, we learned from the previous, from Rabbi Meir said, we learned it from the previous Tanaim. Now, Rabbi Meir seems to be right. Trumas chametz on Erev Pesach, in the 6th hour, is like the case of Rav Hanani and Rabbi Akiva, because according to Bar Kapara's version, it was rabbinical and biblical. And that's what you've got here. You've got chametz, which is rabbinically forbidden because of the time, and you're burning it with something which is definitely tameh. He says they allow you to defile kodshim and truma, which is not fitting for its mitzvah midrabanan, and therefore, according to Bar Kapara's explanation, this should make sense. You can defile trumas chametz at the 6th hour because it's forbidden and it's not fitting for its mitzvah. So why did Rabbi Yossi not accept this? Why did he say we can't learn this din from their words? Based on Bar Kapara, it sort of follows on rabbinical with biblical, and the same thing here. Although here it's a rabbinical time, but it's the same idea. So the Gemara answers: Sova Bar Kapara kashum ben Lakish. Bar Kapara held like Rish Lakish, who said, look, we're not talking about our Mishnah at all. Remember, Shloki said we're talking about another Mishnah elsewhere about getting wine from the vat. To Rish Lakish, Amar, he said, you didn't get this din, you got it, Rediv Rebbe Lezer, Yeshua. You didn't get it from Hanani or Rabbi Akiva at all. With this, you understand that Rabbi Yossi said you can't learn his din with Divrayim. This is what we got. He never understood that. He never said we were following the previous Mishnah. Bar Kapara said, big deal that. We're not talking about that. We're talking about another Mishnah in Trumas. Now, Rabbi Yossi mentioned, Machlekes, you got a few more lines, yeah? Rabbi Yossi mentioned in our Mishnah, Machlekes Rabbi Lezer Bishua. So we've got Machlekes. Rabbi Yossi is the Amoira Rabbi Yossi. So he mentioned in our Mishnah Machlekes between Rabbi Lezer Bishua about Truma Taliyah. Okay, sorry. The Tana Rabbi Yossi mentioned in our Mishnah. Now their argument is, now we're saying we're going to this Trumas, right? This Mishnah in Trumas, where you got an argument of Lezer Yeshua of Truma Taliyah. Now there's 2 din in there. One is the second din is about the wine gushing down from the vat. Okay, that's the second din in the Mishnah. The first din is you've got Truma, which has got a suffix to it. It might be tummy. What are you allowed to do? Can you defile it? Do you have to leave it as it is? Do you still have to guard it in case it's tahar? So there was the first din there. So there was 2 dinim. There was truma taloya, how you treat, let's say truma, which has got this suffix to it, And there was also a case of the truma, which is gushing down, which is going to be lost. Now, the Gemara is going to bring this Mishnah now. We're going to discuss it now. Taman Tanina, we've learnt over there. Chavis shel truma, you have a barrel of truma, shenailad la safek tuma, where there's a suffix has come about. Did a sheretz get here? Did it not get here? Whatever it is.
Yes, you can't.
Now, what do we do with it? If it was in an uncovered place and it's going to get defiled for sure, then yinichena makam muzna, put it in a sealed, in a hidden place, a guarded place. If it was uncovered, you should guard it. So Rebbe says you have to look after this in case it's still tahor. You have to treat it with all respect that it might be tahor. Don't cause it to become definitely tamei. Rabbi Yeshua said, if it was in a hidden place, I don't care. Leave it in an uncovered place. If it had a lid, uncover it. You hear that? That's the other extreme. I don't care. Do whatever you want. It's suffix. Forget it. Don't worry about it. That's what Rabbi Yeshua says. Rabbi Gamliel said, Ali Chadesh Ba'dava. Don't change it from what it is. Don't add guarding. So don't cover it if there's no cover. But don't take off a cover if there is a cover. So Rabbi Gamliel says, leave it as it is. So you have three opinions. Rabbi Lezer said, increase the guarding. Rabbi Yeshua said, reduce the guarding. And Rabbi Gamliel says, maintain the status quo. Now, Rabbi Yosef Medivrei Shloshtam, from these three Tanaim mentioned in the Mishnah, you got Rabbi Lezer, Rabbi Yeshua, Rabbi Gamliel, we learn that Tuluya, Truma, which is Safek, also the Safa, you can't burn it. Even Rabbi Yeshua, who's more lenient, he said leave it in a place where eventually it will become tamei. He didn't say burn it. He didn't say go and destroy it with your own hands. That he didn't say. Now, after the Mishnah in Trumas brought this argument, Rabbi Lezer, Rabbi Yeshua, about a barrel of Truma which is taloi, do you cover it? Do you uncover it? Do you leave it as it is? It brings the additional argument. The additional argument is the vat with the wine coming down. A barrel of Truma which is broken, the wine is going to get spilt into the chulin wine which is below. Rabbi Lezer says, do not defile with your hands the Truma, which anyway is going to become tamei. Don't go and receive it in tamei vessels. Rabbi Yeshua allows it. Now the Gemara is discussing now, if Rabbi Yeshua, in these two arguments, so we have two arguments, right? One is, what do you do with the tluya, or the sophic stuff? And the other one is this wine gushing down, can you go and defile it with your hands? Now, the question is, if the two dinim of Rabbi Yeshua, do they fit in with each other? Do they correlate or not? Chavraya, the Shem Rabbi Elazar, the Bnei Yeshiva said the name Rabbi Elazar, Chavis Rishona, which is the first case. Chavis Rishona means the case of Tuluya, right? That first case, where Rabbi Yeshua says you can cause Truma, but don't burn it. Can't burn it, but you can cause Truma. That is Rabbi Yossi. That is Rabbi Yossi's version of Rabbi Yeshua. It's Rabbi Yeshua in Rabbi Yossi's view of Rabbi Yeshua. But the argument of Shania, the second din, where you can defile it with your hands, that is Reb Meir. That's Reb Meir's view of Rabbi Yeshua. You hear that? There are two opinions as to what Rabbi Yeshua said. The first case, you can see it's strange, right? You got one Mishnah, we're saying, well, first part is one version of Rabbi Yeshua, second part is one version. The first part says, well, don't burn it. So that's Rabbi Yossi's version of Rabbi Yeshua. Don't burn it. You can uncover it, but don't burn it. And now we're saying you can put a tamei keli underneath and receive it in a tamei keli. That's Rabbi Meir's version of Rabbi Yeshua. Now, Chavraya Omrin. So this they said in the name of Rabbi Elazar that there are two versions of Rabbi Yeshua. Chavraya Omrin. They said to explain Rabbi Elazar now. Chavis Rishona. The first argument with the barrel, Rabbi Yeshua allowed you to cause truma, but don't burn it. Rabbi Yossi. That is Rabbi Yossi's version of Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Meir would never say that Rabbi Yeshua would go so far. Rabbi Meir would say Rabbi Yeshua never said that. Right? Chavis Shnia, the second argument about the barrel, Rabbi Yeshua allows you to defile it with your hands. That's Rabbi Meir's version of Rabbi Yeshua. But Rabbi Yossi said, I'm afraid Rabbi Yeshua would never go so far. So you hear that. So there are two versions as to what Rabbi Yeshua would say. But less Rabbi Yossi might have. Rabbi Yossi does not agree that Rabbi Yeshua would go so far. You can actually defile it with your hands. Put a tome keli. Rabbi Yossi said, no, Rabbi Yeshua never said that. Amalon, Rabbi Yossi. Now this is another Rabbi Yossi. So Rabbi Yossi is telling these people, Amalon Rabbi Yossi, the Bnei Yeshiva, Rabbi Yossi bar Zavida, he's telling the Bnei Yeshiva, Chamun ma'atun amrin. Look and see what you're saying. You're saying, Chavis Rishona, the first argument, that's about the Truma Tuluya. Can you burn it? No. Can you uncover it? You said, don't burn it. That is Rabbi Yossi's version of Rabbi Yeshua. Baram, however, Reb Meir's version of Rabbi Yeshua would say, Sovin, you're allowed to burn it. Or Reb Shimon. And according to another Tana we're bringing now, according to Reb Shimon, which we're going to see later, he holds definitely Sofin, you're allowed to be burning that. Truma today you can burn. So you've got, Reb Meir would allow you to, but Reb Meir's version of Yeshua would allow you to burn it. Reb Shimon says you can burn it. And Reb Yossi's version of Reb Shimon says you can't. Reb Yeshua says you can't. So we've got two against one. So the Yuba Reb Meir, Reb Shimon, and Reb Yossi, they should increase. You've got Reb Meir's view of Reb Shimon, of Yeshua. You've got Reb Shimon as well. And they all say you can burn it in the case of Tuluya. So there's two against one. But Yisrael, you should be able to, the halacha should be you can burn it. One against two, follow the two. And how did Rebbe in our Stam Mishnah say, like Rabbi Yossi, don't burn it? But halacha Stam Mishnah, Rebbe shouldn't have said Stam Mishnah against the halacha. You got two. You got Reb Meir's version of Yeshua. You got Reb Shimon. Both say you can burn it. Why can't you burn it? But Shamina min hada. We can learn from the following that maybe that you can't burn Truma Tuluya min mada anan chamin rabbanan. The fact is, we see the Chachamim that what Uvda that the Uvda asa kamein story came to them of Truma which had a suffix Tuma, and a person asked what to do. Being an Amrin Ezel Tali, they said, you know what, just leave it. Don't eat it, don't burn it. So they actually paskin halacha lemaisa not to burn Truma which is suffix Tuma. Now according to this, they should have paskin like Reb Meir's version of Yeshua, and you got Reb Shimon. They say you can actually burn it. Suffix Tuma, you can burn it. So it must be. They didn't paskin like that, but you got two against one. Why didn't they paskin like that? It must be. Reb Meir doesn't hold like Reb Shimon, that you can actually burn it. He actually holds like Rabbi Yossi, that no, you have to leave it. And that's why the Chacham paskin like that, because that's the majority. So you wanted to say, Rabbi Yossi's version of Yeshua says you leave it. No, actually Reb Meir's version of Yeshua will also say leave it. Okay? Now, where do we see that Reb Shimon actually said you can burn it? Where do we see Reb Shimon say you can actually burn it? That which we've learnt. Umaydim Reb Lezer Yeshua Susafin Zul Asma. Now this is what we find a Trumas Chametz, which is Tahar, in our Mishnah, and the words of Rabbi Yossi, that you can burn Trumas Chametz Tahar Le'asma on its own, V'Zul Asma, and Tameh one on its own. Don't defile it. Where they're arguing on like Tuluya or Trumas Chametz Tameh, Reb Lezer said burn them together. Don't defile one the other. Rabbi Yeshua said you can burn them together. You're going to defile the Tuluya one with definite. That was our Mishnah. So Rabbi Yossi said, according to Rabbi Yeshua, you can be Matame Truma Tuluya with your hands. And on this, Rabbi Yochanan said, although the Mishnah said Rabbi Yossi learned the view of Rabbi Yeshua, it's really Rav Shimon Shania. The truth is it's Rav Shimon's view who learned the view of Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Yossi himself held, Rabbi Yeshua would say you cannot defile Truma Tuluya with your hands. Basically, Rav Shimon is the one who holds that according to Rabbi Yeshua, the halachas like him, you can defile Truma Tuluya with your hands. You don't have to guard it, because you can't eat it out of doubt. It's not fitting for its mitzvah, and therefore, for the same reason, you can burn Truma Tuluya the whole year, according to Rav Shimon. You don't have to guard it at all. Truma Tuluya, you can burn it whenever you want. That's Rav Shimon's view. Now, Rabbi Yossi bar Zavida brought a proof to his question on the Bnei Yeshiva. He says what? We see here, in the words of Rabbi Yochanan, Rav Shimon allows you to burn Truma Tuluya. Why doesn't you join together? Rav Meir's version of Rabbi Yeshua says you can burn it. Rav Shimon says you can burn it. You got most opinions allowing you to burn Truma Tuluya. The halacha should be like that. It must be, he said, Rav Meir does not allow you to burn it. He holds like Rabbi Yossi that you can't burn it. Now, There's another question now on what the Bnei Yeshiva said, named Rabbi Lazar. They said Rameir allows you always to be metame with your hands or to burn truma teluya. He says in Tema, if you're going to tell me less the Rameir teluya, Rameir doesn't hold of truma teluya. You can't burn it. But if you're going to tell me you can actually burn it straight away, if you're going to tell me Rameir holds you can just burn it, V'hatani, now in the Brisa, there's a Brisa about biur of Trumas Chometz on Erev Pesach, and it says there, Truma Teluya, so you've got Safek Tumah, you've got Chometz with a Safek Teluya, Utmeya, and you've got a Tameh one on one side, you've got Truma Teluya on one side. Do you know what you can do? The Brisa says, Sofin Oisa Be'erev Shabbos, you can burn it on the Erev Shabbos, which is, let's say Shabbos is the 14th, so you can't burn it on Shabbos, you can burn it on the 13th. Im Chashecha, just as it's getting dark, Divrei Meir, just before Shabbos, you can burn it then. Now, if you can burn Truma Teluya any time, why are you waiting till the 13th, just before Shabbos? The Chachamim said, look, you do it on the 14th in the morning, where if it's Shabbos, you'll have to break it up or whatever it is. What do we see? Rameir does not allow you to burn Truma Teluya all year round, Truma with a doubt all year round. He doesn't just go ahead and say, go and burn it whenever you want. They left it to the last minute. Otherwise, he wouldn't have to wait till the 13th of Nisan close to dark. You could have burnt it whenever you want. Not like you want to say, he argues on the first case in the Mishnah of Trumas, who holds you can't burn Truma Teluya or to defile it. Obviously, he holds you, if you're going to tell me he allows you to do it, then why doesn't he allow it all year? Why only the last minute? Rabbi Ezra, Rabbi Ezra said in the name of Ramana, Tifta, we can explain the case. When he said you can burn it, but he says, you know what? It's Truma, which is Safek, where you're not going to ask a Chacham what the din is. You've given up. You can't be bothered asking the question. He might say it's Tahar. Therefore, you don't have to worry, it might be Tahar, because you're not going to ask the question. Therefore, the owner's not going to ask. The doubt is never going to be answered. It's going to be forbidden forever until it gets lost. And therefore, it's Truma, which is going to be destroyed. And therefore, according to Rameir, there's no chiyuv of Shmirah. You can burn it whenever you want. Right? When you've got Truma of Suffolk, where you're never going to ask the question, it's always going to be forbidden, you can burn it when you like. Now, in this brisa of Erev Pesach, we're saying burn it late on the Friday, where you cannot burn it until that time, it's talking about Truma, where you have intention to ask, what will the din be? So you don't want to burn it now, you're going to ask a Chacham, and maybe he'll allow it. Yeah. Therefore, you can't burn it as long as it's not definite, unless you have that Biur Chometz obligation. Because it could be Il Pasket is Tahar, and it's not considered going to waste. Now, Ramona, I just want to see here. Okay, well, a few more lines. Yeah. Ramona, who before Rav Ezra said his answer, brings actually a support for this answer. Ramona said, the Kain Rabbi Yossi, and this is what Rabbi Yossi said, Rabbi Yossi Bazvida, although we're talking about, Truma Teluya, according to Bnei Yeshiva, Rameir allows you to burn it, but Teluya she'ein da'ateh lahashil allow. So it must be, it's Truma which you're never going to ask on. That's why it allows you to burn it. If you're going to ask on it and it might end up being okay, then even Rameir will say don't burn it. Harav with tahara. You have to treat it as being tahara because you may end up getting a psak. There's tahara. But Tani came, we've learned in the Brisa, Truma Teluya she'amru. If Truma Teluya, where the owner said tahara hitmei, basically it could be I would ask a chacham and it could be as tahara, but I'm going to treat it as tamei. I'm not going to ask. Then Harav with tamei. Then you treat it as if it's tamei and it's being burnt. Because you're not going to ask on it, you're never going to find out it's tahar, and therefore it's considered it's going to be lost, you can burn it. However, im omar round imanicha, if you say, no, I'm going to leave it, I'm going to wait and see, I'm going to ask the hashir allow, I'm going to ask, maybe it's tahar, then I raise it tahara, then we treat it as tahar, you can't burn it. Because it could be a chacham paskin is tahar. Now, then the Gemara actually now pushes away an answer to try and answer Bnei Yeshiva. My kedun. So what you're saying, look, Rameir really allows you to burn it, but there was a case where he doesn't because you're going to ask about it. He says, my kedun, what sort of answer is this? The Brisa clearly says, Rameir says you can't burn Truma Teluya if you're going to ask about it. So then, look, the Bnei Yeshiva are not going to explain, look, the first case in the Mishnah is not like Rameir, because even though that case doesn't allow you to burn it, But it could be a Ramea. It could be something like a case where the owner's going to ask about it. Well, they're going to start going to a whole explanation. Then they said it's not like Ramea, but it could be Ramea. It depends if you're going to ask. You're not going to ask. They're not going to go into such detail. It must be no. You can't give me that answer. It must be the Bnei Yeshiva. They said, you know what? I don't care. According to Ramea, whether you're going to ask, you're not going to ask. Even if you're going to ask, you can burn it. You understand? Just don't start telling me that distinction. We're not accepting that, the Bnei Yeshiva said. Whether you ask or not, Rameh holds, you can burn it. And that's why they had to say the first case of the Mishnah, which forbids you to defile Truma in your hands, Truma Teluya, is not like Rameh. But then the question comes back. If Rameh does allow you to burn Truma Teluya on the 13th, on the Friday, close to getting dark, so in other times he forbids it. Not like the Bnei Yeshiva. You said Rameh allows it the rest of the year. But here he only allows it on Erev Pesach. Why just before Shabbos? So the Gemara gives another answer on the question. Tifta, you can explain the Brisa. The Brisa only allowed you to burn it just before Shabbos. Do you know why? Because that's when the doubt came about. The problem only came about then. Until now it was Tahar. So of course you can't burn it. The problem came about then. The whole doubt came just before sunset. You can't learn from the Brisa about the view of Rameh. You cannot learn the according to Rameh you have to be Taylor Truma, which is Suffolk Tum, and you mustn't burn it. Could be he allows you to burn it, like the Bnei Yeshiva said. And that which he says in the Brisa, you burn it close to sunset, not before, was a case where the suffix, the doubt, came about then. And had the doubt come about in the morning, he would allow you to burn it in the morning. But the doubt only came about then. Now, the Atan Amrin. You want to carry on? It's this, the Sugya goes on.
Yeah.
We can stop here, I suppose.
Yeah.
We can stop here. To be continued, Rabbi Stein.